There is a secret gravity that pulls certain souls toward the broken edges of others, a mysterious calling that weaves empaths into the lives of those who bleed psychic fragments, who stumble in exile from their own truth. Time and again, the tender-hearted become sanctuaries for chaos, temples for grief not born of their flesh, healers of wounds that do not trace back to their own lifelines. And yet, this is no accident. This is the whisper of something far older than choice, older than desire, older than the tender fiction of free will. This is the unconscious playing its ancient music, archetypal and fated, summoning these encounters as if to remind us of what lies buried beneath the threshold of knowing. Before we begin, take a moment to like and subscribe. The more you engage and stay with the content, the more YouTube shares these timeless insights with others. By doing so, you're not only helping this channel grow, but also spreading Carl Jung's transformative wisdom to those seeking meaning and inner truth. Let's dive into the depth of the psyche together. Empathy, in its true essence, is not a soft trait, not merely kindness stretched thin across a weeping world. It is a covenant woven between the soul and the collective unconscious, an unspoken vow to feel not just the tears of others, but the forgotten cries of the human condition itself. Empaths do not simply witness pain, they become vessels for what humanity has cast into shadow, for what individuals cannot or will not bear. They are mirrors to unspoken agony, and mirrors cannot refuse reflection. But a mirror, though passive in form, is alive in consequence. To gaze long enough into one is to be confronted with the unhidden self. And therein lives both tragedy and transcendence. The empath is both witness and carrier, both mirror and bearer of what the world will not own. The bond between empath and wounded other is no romance spun by destiny's soft hand. It is a magnetic tether born of unfinished psychic business, a resonance of archetypes unhealed in both souls. Every psyche houses an invisible pantheon, the hero seeking a dragon to slay, the victim crying for recognition, the shadow prowling in silence, the child longing for safety, the saboteur gnawing at dreams, the healer yearning to soothe. These are not roles performed on the stage of life, they are primeval patterns stitched into the tapestry of human existence, older than language, older than names. And not all these figures within us walk free. Many are chained in the dark, bound by trauma, silenced by shame, or exiled by fear. What cannot be claimed inwardly will seek embodiment outwardly. The psyche projects what it cannot integrate, weaving encounters that echo its secret fractures. The empath, porous and unguarded, becomes the altar for another's unredeemed archetype. The man who abandoned his inner child offers his sorrow to the empath who has been trained to cradle invisible grief. The woman who exiled her fierce, protective masculine gives her longing to the empath who confuses being needed with being loved. This is not a love story. It is a psychic ritual where unowned energies find each other, where ancient wounds attempt to dance their way to healing, often leaving devastation in their wake. The empath becomes heavy, not just in body but in spirit. Their dreams turn to labyrinths of drowning seas, of blood becoming light poured endlessly into the void, of running through strange houses with countless locked doors. They awake bone-tired, heart-frayed, carrying grief that does not belong entirely to them. Their nervous systems are thrones where foreign archetypes sit, demanding redemption the empath cannot truly grant. And yet, the repetition persists. Because beneath the longing to heal another lies a deeper longing, still to see, touch, and soothe the forgotten faces within oneself. The relationships that repeat like incantations, narcissists, addicts, manipulators, those forever unavailable are not random. They are symbols. They are the inner pantheon made flesh, inviting recognition, begging for integration. Dreams tell this story with unflinching clarity. A house appears, familiar yet strange. Infinite rooms lining its corridors, some open with ease, revealing memories long thought dead. Others are locked, humming with unseen presence. The empath wanders, compelled to open every door, to touch every fragment, to gather every lost piece. But what lurks behind these doors are not spirits of others. They are the empath's own unclaimed archetypes, long banished, haunting the psychic house like children calling for a parent who never came. To end the cycle, one must descend. The answer is never truly about saving the wounded lover, nor healing the fractured friend. The question is why your soul was drawn to their wound like a moth to flame. What forgotten archetype in you reached out in resonance? What exile within called to the exile without? The path of liberation is not paved with the healing of others. It is carved by turning inward, by reclaiming the fragments that once reached outward for salvation. To walk this path is to break the unconscious contract, to free oneself from fate disguised as love, to meet the self in the locked rooms of the inner house and finally turn the key. And now, dear traveler of the deep psyche, I invite you into a quiet ritual beneath this vast and invisible moon we share. Close your eyes and imagine a great river flowing through the dark forest of your being. Upon its surface floats a single candle, its flame flickering with the truth you have just gathered from these words. In your hands, there is a number, a symbol whispered from your soul, carrying the weight of what you now see more clearly. Perhaps it is the number of locked doors you still hold within. Perhaps it is the number of cycles you are ready to break, the number of wounds you vow to reclaim as your own. Cast this number into the river. Watch it drift toward the unseen horizon where beginnings and endings kiss. And when you return from this vision, write that number below as a sacred offering not to me, but to the echoing chambers of your own unconscious, as a seal upon the promise to descend, to integrate, to awaken into the wholeness that has always been waiting behind the final unopened door. And that, let us be honest, is a terrifying proposition because it means dismantling the illusion that your love alone can save another. It means seeing that your empathy may have become enmeshment, that your compassion may be a disguise for codependency, that your spiritual gift may also be a defense mechanism forged in childhood chaos. I do not say this to shame the empath. On the contrary, I say this to liberate you. For once, the archetype is made conscious. It no longer rules your fate. Once the empath realizes that their psychic openness must be tempered by boundaries, by discernment, and by deep inner work, they begin the journey toward individuation, toward becoming holy, not through others, but through the reclamation of their own fragmented self. And the moment this journey begins, the magnetism shifts. You no longer attract the chaos. You no longer crave the pain. You begin to see with X-ray vision the archetypes living in others, not as burdens to heal, but as signals to observe. And most of all, you begin to meet yourself. You meet the inner child who was left in the corner waiting to be seen. You meet a warrior who learned to fight everyone else's battles but neglected their own. You meet the lover who gave everything away and forgot how to receive. You meet the shadow who in exile became the puppeteer behind every destructive attraction. And you say, I see you. I welcome you. Let us integrate this. My beloved listener, is the true work of the empath, to transmute their suffering into sovereignty. But do not be deceived. This work is not clean. It is not linear. It is not romantic. It is messy. It is sacred. It is initiatory. It involves solitude. It involves grief. It involves staring into the mirror long enough to see what you tried to find in others. But it also brings power authentic, a quiet, unshakable power, the kind of power that no longer needs to rescue, because it has remembered that wholeness cannot be given. It must be retrieved. Let us pause for a moment and reflect upon the myth of Persephone. The maiden is abducted into the underworld by Hades. Her mother, Demeter, weeps and searches for her. The world goes barren. But it is in the underworld that Persephone is transformed. She eats the pomegranate seeds. She becomes queen, and though she returns to the surface, she is no longer the same. This is the empath's descent. You go into the darkness not to save Hades, but to remember your own royalty. You emerge not as a rescuer, but as a sovereign being who understands the language of shadow and light. And in doing so, you no longer attract unhealed archetypes. You magnetize those who have also made the descent. You mate equals. You meet mirrors who reflect not your wounds, but your wholeness. This is the promise of individuation. This is the gift of bringing the unconscious to light. Not so you may fix others, but so you may finally remember you were never broken. You were simply absorbing stories that were never yours. The moment you awaken to the unconscious contract that has been silently guiding your relationships, you stand at the threshold of an interior evolution. You begin to notice the subtle language of energy, of dreams, of patterns. What once felt like fate now reveals itself as repetition echoes of the unlived life. The empath in their unawakened state becomes not only a receiver of emotional residues, but a participant in unconscious mythologies. They live out the roles others have repressed, unknowingly performing in a drama whose script was written in the dark corridors of another's psyche. But no one plays these roles unless deep within they were written for themselves too. This is the treachery and the truth of projection. It does not originate only in the other. It begins within. What the empath attracts is a vibration they themselves resonate with, even if unconsciously, not because they are weak, but because they are wide open. They are still bound to an archetype of the wounded healer, of the forgotten child, of the lover who could not rescue the parent. Their openness is not just sensitivity, it is a psychic portal through which ancient patterns seek reincarnation. Imagine a woman who consistently falls for emotionally unavailable men to the surface mind. It may appear as poor judgment or romantic misfortune, but if we journey into her unconscious, we often find a father distant, absent, emotionally withdrawn, and deeper still we find the archetype of the abandoned feminine, unacknowledged and aching. She does not merely love the unavailable man, she is reenacting an inner drama with the hope of a different ending. She is not in love with a man. She is in love with what he represents, a potential reconciliation with her original loss. But the unconscious does not resolve through repetition. It resolves through awareness. It resolves when the dream is decoded, when the archetype is named, when the inner child is held in the arms of the self. The same is true for the empath, who becomes entangled with the narcissist. This union is not random. It is alchemical. It is a collision of two unmetabolized archetypes. The narcissist has disowned their inner vulnerability, and the empath has disowned their inner sovereignty. The narcissist must control. The empath must merge. One seeks power without feeling. The other seeks connection without boundary. Together, they form a perfect storm until the storm is seen for what it is. A mirror, not a prison. This mirror shows the empath something crucial, that they, to have a shadow, that beneath their compassion may live a hidden rage, that behind their healing may live a need to be needed, that within their love may exist a deep fear of abandonment. It is only when these inner figures are seen and integrated that the external pattern loses its grip. The unhealed archetypes cease to possess. The empath ceases to perform. The soul begins to individuate. Let us speak now of boundaries not as walls of defense, but as sacred containers for psychic energy. The empath must learn that sensitivity is not sainthood without boundaries. Empathy becomes fusion, and fusion is the death of individuation. To love another without losing oneself is the task of the awakened empath. To feel another's sorrow without becoming it. To witness another's archetype without absorbing it. This is not denial of empathy. It is the maturation of it. It is empathy with consciousness. It is compassion with clarity to reach this state. One must descend into the dream realm, for dreams are the purest expression of the unconscious. They are the canvas upon which the soul paints what the ego refuses to see. In dreams, the empath may encounter snakes, oceans, dead forests, bleeding hearts. These are not omens of destruction. They are messages. Archetypal emissaries crying out for recognition. A snake may represent a rising kundalini power previously feared. An ocean may symbolize unprocessed grief or ancestral pain. A forest burned to ash may represent the psychic clearing necessary before renewal. The dream does not lie. It does not flatter. It reveals. But only the ego is terrified of revelation. When the empath dreams of drowning, they are often living too deeply in others' emotional waters. When they dream of flight, they may be attempting to escape a truth they are not yet ready to embody. When they dream of empty houses or neglected gardens, it is often the self trying to show them the state of their inner life. Interpret your dreams not as prophecy, but as invitations. Each symbol is a part of you crying out for homecoming. Now, let us return to the archetypes. Unhealed archetypes act like autonomous spirits. They possess. They dominate. They distort perception. The victim archetype, when unhealed, manipulates with passivity. The savior archetype, when unhealed, rescues to avoid intimacy with its own pain. The rebel archetype, when wounded, destroys not to liberate, but to avoid being seen. The empath often carries multiple unhealed archetypes inherited across generations. This is not a personal flaw. It is a spiritual assignment. You are not only healing your story, you are healing a lineage. When you finally face the fact that your compassion has become a cage, that your tenderness has shielded you from your own unmet rage, you begin to reclaim your inner fire, not to burn others, but to light the path through your own darkness. There will come a moment, and it comes for all who walk the path of individuation, where you must choose between the comfort of your old roles and the truth of your becoming. You will lose people. You will lose your identity as a good person, as a selfless soul. And in that loss, you will gain something that no one can give you, the full authority of your integrated self. You will no longer seek to be seen. You will see. You will no longer seek to be loved. You will love without clinging, without rescuing, without abandoning yourself. This is the turning point. The point at which the empath ceases to be a sponge and becomes a sovereign. Not cold, nude, hardened, but luminous, grounded, divine in their boundaries, holy in their no, sacred in their solitude. There is nothing more powerful than an empath who has faced their shadow and returned with gold. The gold is not the avoidance of suffering. It is the transmutation of suffering into wisdom, into discernment, into presence that does not absorb, but transforms. At this stage, the empath becomes the alchemist. They enter a room and feel everything, but they are no longer consumed. They engage with others deeply, but they no longer become the archetype the other cannot carry. They still love, but from a place of fullness, not from a wound. This, beloved listener, is a promise of psychic maturity, and yet there is more. There are layers of the self that are only accessible through retreat, through dreams, through sacred withdrawal. The empath must create a relationship not only with others, but with the archetypes within. Meet your own victim. Listen to its story. Converse with your own inner child. Ask what it longs for. Greet the warrior. Ask where you have silenced it. Make a place at your table for the shadow, and offer it not judgment, but curiosity. This inner council or ensemble becomes the fortress of your being. You are no longer just empathetic. Then you are mythic. You are no longer merely emotional. You are symbolic, sacred, and fierce in your wholeness. There is a sacred responsibility that falls upon those who are born with the sensitivity to feel the world in its raw, unfiltered essence. The empath, whether they realize it or not, carries a mystical inheritance. It is not always a blessing. More often, it is a burden at first, but that burden contains within it the seeds of metamorphosis, of profound rebirth. If only one dares to descend deeply enough into the soul's labyrinth. You see, sensitivity without consciousness is suffering. But sensitivity fused with individuation, that is, illumination. Many empaths are not simply absorbing pain from others in the present. They are unwitting carriers of ancestral stories that were never spoken aloud. Their bodies vibrate with centuries. Their dreams drip with symbols that belong not just to them, but to entire family lines. They become what I have called the redeemers of the ancestral field, those whom fate has chosen to face what the generations before them could not. If your heart aches with a sorrow you cannot name, if you have wept over injustices that did not happen to you but live in your cells as if they did, know this: you are in the realm of archetypal inheritance. You are not merely empathic. You are ancestral. You are psychic. You are mythic. And what is unhealed will seek to live through you until it is finally transmuted. This is not punishment. This is alchemy. The unhealed archetypes that empaths attract are not just projections. They are karmic echoes. They are soul contracts formed in invisible dimensions. They are unfinished initiations passed down through blood and bone. And the empath is often the one who volunteers silently and unconsciously to be the final chapter of those stories. But to complete the story, one must rewrite the script. One must awaken. There is a moment in every empath's journey when they realize that love in its truest form is not rescue. It is revelation. To love another is to reveal them to themselves, not by fixing, not by fusing, but by beholding. And you cannot behold another until you have dared to behold yourself. The full spectrum, the shadow and the gold, the sorrow and the sovereignty, the rage and the grace. To do this requires a death not of the body, but of the mask. The empath must die to the identity of being the good one, the healer, the always there, the one who bends so others won't break. And in that death, something ancient stirs. The self not, the ego, not the persona, but the self with a capital submerges like a phoenix from beneath the ruins of performance. This is the true rebirth, the archetype of the reborn healer. This figure does not absorb pain unconsciously. They witness it. They channel it. They understand that their gift is not to carry others' wounds, but to name them, to offer sacred space for revelation, not dependence, and thus the entire relational dynamic changes. The empath no longer attracts partners, the friends or clients who unconsciously demand to be saved. Those old magnetic threads dissolve because the internal archetype that once drew them has been integrated. What was once a wound becomes a gift, but only because it has been metabolized, felt, held, transfigured. Let us speak of dreams once more. The evolved empath begins to dream differently. The nightmares subside. The drowning ends in its place. Visions arise, symbols of strength. Sacred animals hold the keys, open doors, hills bathed in light, inner companions who guide rather than drain. These dreams are not random, they are confirmation. They are the psyche's way of signaling that integration is taking place. The archetypes are no longer at war. They are now in council. The empath, who once felt scattered, now feels centered. The chaos that once filled every room they entered no longer pierces steam. It passes through them because they no longer confuse it with who they are. This is the essence of inner alchemy. What once possessed you now serves you. You are no longer at the mercy of the unconscious. You are in relationship with it, and relationship with the unconscious. That is the deepest form of power a human being can hold. But I must warn you, beloved listener, that the path is not linear. The ego will fight. All patterns will whisper, seduce, claw their way back into your nervous system. You will be tempted to fall into familiar wounds just to feel connection again. You will miss the chaos. You will miss being needed. You may even grieve the loss of your former self. That is normal. That is holy. Grieve the empath who had no boundaries. Grieve the child who became the adult caretaker. Grieve the love you gave without reciprocity. And then let it become ash. Ash is not the end. In the alchemical process, ash is the beginning. From ash, the new body forms. From ash, the dream is rewritten. From ash, the sovereign empath is born not to withdraw from the world, but to engage it from a different octave of being. You become the archetype of the oraclino because you predict the future, but because you have made peace with your past. And in that peace, you become a channel for clarity. You become the archetype of the priestess or the magus, not because you wear robes, but because you carry wisdom. You become the archetype of the three deeply rooted, widely reaching, unwavering in the storm. You no longer seek archetypes outside you. You embody them. And when you meet others who are still caught in the web of projection, you do not enter the web. You remain still. You remain light. And from that stillness, you offer reflection, not absorption. This is the gift you now carry. This is the fruit of your journey through shadow, through sorrow, through the dreamscape of archetypal healing. You are not who you were. You are more.